And welcome back to the BSD YouTube show. As always, your host, Patrick Kerbler. And today, it's the off season. It is absolutely off season. So we have been talking about doing this series for over a year now. But we're introducing something called Happy Valley Rewind, which for BSD readers out there, I did one article in the off season in 2023 about the Penn State Ohio State game in 2014. So we'll get into it here in a second. I'll explain the whole process, but today I'm joined by Bryant Bennett, who has kind of been the co-creator of this. It's his passion project as well. It's just watching old Penn State games. So Bryant, thank you for joining me today.
I'm so excited to be here. Like I said, people who read the site, you'll know every week I do the Lion Tales article, which is kind of a look back at a historic game between Penn State versus that week's opponent. So excited to do it here with kind of a bigger idea in mind.
Yeah, so we'll be going through this offseason, and we're going to see how popular it is. I think Brian and I are expecting it to be quite popular, but we'll see what the demand is. But every couple of weeks in the offseason, in the lead up to Penn State's 2026 season, we're going to be looking back at previous games. And today, as you can tell by the title, we're going to be looking at and starting with Penn State versus Minnesota 2016, which, again, not to get too far into it because we're going to discuss it, once we get to our topics and stuff like that, but a pivotal game in Penn State's history and certainly recent history in the James Franklin era itself. So just to give you guys a rundown, and then I will explain the topics as we get to them, but we're going to have a couple different topics, a couple different segments, whatever we want to call it, to help us, try to stay organized and stay on schedule and talk about some different dynamics. So state of the program going into the game, we'll discuss the most rewatchable play, the Mandela Effect. We'll explain that in a second. Biggest gaffe. That could be coach, that could be player, that could be, referees. The Yaacov Yisrael. Hey, remember that guy? So we're just going to name some guys from the game that maybe we forgot about. Man, it'd be nice to have that guy. Someone that stuck out from the game as like, hey, would be really nice if he was on Penn State's team. Once again, we'll talk about that when we get to it. Pivotal moment. Apex Mountain performance. Was there anyone in the game that had, they were at the peak of their powers, right? At some point we will do like Penn State, Iowa 2017. That, for example, would be, I think Saquon's Apex Mountain performance. Rewatchability ranking. How enjoyable on a scale of 1 to 10, how enjoyable was this game as a rewatch? And then what we wish we knew then. So with the benefit of hindsight, we're looking back at this. What do we wish that we knew then if we could travel back in time and talk to our past selves? So, Brian, let's get started with the state of the program going into the game. And just real quick, I should also mention this. Any game that we do, we will have the link to the full game in the YouTube description. So if you want to, go back and watch the game and then listen to us after, I'll have that posted. So Penn State, Minnesota 2016. Brian, what was the state of Penn State's program?
Penn State was 2-2 coming into this game. They were coming off just a completely non-competitive loss to Michigan. We probably all remember, or hopefully don't remember. It was 49-10. They had 200 yards of total offense. The entire linebacking core got injured that game. James Franklin at this point was 16-14. That was his record. It was just this really very subdued, crowd coming into Beaver Stadium that day, 10,000 empty seats, rainy Saturday afternoon. I was going to ask you, what were your expectations, I guess, going into that season? Kind of what did you think of the team? Because I think we were all just looking for some fun, and this wasn't fun yet.
No, it's funny that you say that. So I will say, going into the game itself, and this is going to be a reoccurring topic. I'm going to talk about basically the two guys that I think were the greatest guys on Penn State's beat. David Jones, rest in peace, and Bob Flounders, who's still on it. So I'll share their score predictions here in a second. But I actually did go back and I looked at my BSD score prediction for this game, and I predicted that Minnesota was going to win 35-31. So going into this 2016 season, I think it was kind of like what you said, like we were just looking for some fun. And I'm pretty sure there was at one point, I can't remember what year. I want to say it was 2016, where I was very much like, I don't even care about the results. I care more about the process of it. Because Penn State was, coming off some 7-win seasons. I didn't care if they got 7 wins. I didn't care if they got 9 wins. I didn't care if they got 8 wins. I just wanted something that was fun and entertaining to watch because, the 2014 and 2015 seasons and specifically those offenses, were so difficult to watch. So The Pitt loss in that 2016 season was a tough one just because it's never fun to lose the Pitt. But at least was like, hey, our offense is fun. Trace McSorley is fun. Saquon Barkley's fun, et cetera, et cetera. But like you mentioned, that Michigan loss, what was it, 49-10?
49-10.
Yeah, going into that game was not ideal. But I will say for this, so Minnesota was undefeated on the season. I believe that they were 4-0 or maybe 3-0.
They were 3-0. 3-0. This was Minnesota's first conference game. Yeah.
Okay, so Minnesota was 3-0. Penn State was a 3-point favorite going into this. So did you know that?
I did not know that. I would not have believed it. No.
Yeah, no, and I was surprised to find that out, that Penn State was a 3-point favorite going into the game. Bob Flounders and Dave Jones. So Bob Flounders predicted a 33-31 victory for Penn State, and Dave Jones predicted a 41-40 victory. So this at least showcased, I think, the belief in the offense, which was a little bit different for Penn State and James Franklin in that era. And I just want to give Flounders a shout out. He said he predicted a red zone stop for Penn State that would be pivotal. We'll talk about some of those pivotal moments, but there certainly was a red zone stop for Penn State. So what about you? What were you, as a fan expecting, if you remember, going into this game and kind of like around the point in the season of, they lose to Pitt, they have that embarrassing loss to Michigan, and we're kind of just thinking like, this is it. This is
yeah. I really feel bad. But looking back, I remember actually calling a friend after the Pitt game and saying like, well, it was fun. It was it was what we talked about, right? It was the second half, like Saquon got going, wheel route, foreshadowing, we saw the wheel route. And there was the bad drop with Deshaun, right? Dropped the ball against Pitt. Yeah. And obviously the McSorley throws the interception. But I remember having a phone call and just saying like, well, at least it was a fun game. Like Penn State looked like a competent football team. It was a lot different than the John Donovan offenses. So I was like, okay, let's go with this. And then Michigan happened. And I really vividly remember the Michigan game, like Penn State getting the kickoff. I know I'm not trying to go too far back into Michigan, but like 3 and out, they punt the ball. Michigan returns it to like the 30-yard line, scores. It was like, what are we doing? It was like this game. I remember giving up on very rarely, especially nowadays I can't give up, right? But like back then, like very, very rarely did I give up on a Penn State game. I remember the second half of Michigan, like I have better things to do with my life than watch this, And so I remember turning into Minnesota like, okay, guys, show me some life, show me something. And, again, always like diehard, like most of us are. People listening, if you're listening to this podcast, you're diehard, right? But, going into that game, just thinking like, okay, guys, please show me something. And then the first half happened and it was not fun, not fun. I know, kind of getting into it a little bit.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a good, kicking off point for us to get into this game. So, as you mentioned, Brian, like anyone who's watching this is a diehard Penn State football fan. In case you don't know, Penn State did win this game 29-26, and we look back on it as kind of the turning point for the James Franklin era, I would say, because this is the first game. And now you could not hear this, at least from what I watched. You couldn't hear any of the Fire Franklin chants as they went into halftime. But this was the first time that I remember, like, real, actual, like, I mean, listen, it was not like James was beloved in the 2014 or 2015 seasons, how those went, but this was the first time where it did feel somewhat real that he was going to be fired, or at least was going to seriously be on the hot seat if this season did not, go into the right direction. I like specifically remember like, Matt Rule at this point was at Temple, and it was like clear as day, like he was probably going to be the guy. I remember like Kyle Whittingham, oddly enough, now at Michigan, was like another guy. Like I remember having my hot board that I'm always updating, but back then was like the first time I made it, because I really thought, especially during halftime when it was 13-3, thought that was going to be, where this all went. But before we get into, we're going to talk some of that big picture stuff here in a little bit, but what is the most rewatchable play of this game? So the way that we're going to break this out, and for this game, it probably coincides with the pivotal moments, because, man, if you guys have not rewatched this game, it's a tough one. It is a tough one because the big plays for Penn State were few and far between, and almost every big play was a pivotal moment play. So, what were some of your pivotal moments, most rewatchable plays from this game?
This is the Irv Charles game, right? I mean, like, I think did someone write this? Did we write this? I can't remember who wrote it, right? But like, we had this idea for a series on the site a year or so ago, like guys who were only remembered for one play, and this is the Irv Charles play, right? Penn State's down 13-3. They're facing a third and forever to open. But we'll get to Mandela Effect in a second. But a third down in the third quarter, and Trace steps up and hits Irv Charles over the middle. Irv breaks a tackle and rushes, for like the only meaningful play of Irv Charles' career, by the way, which is a college football career that's, I think, still going, maybe. I think he still has eligibility left, right? But he
ended at IUP, oddly enough.
Ended at IUP, yeah, exactly. I did look that up, right? Like he played forever, though, like just forever. And he scores this touchdown. It was like that was the moment. It's like, the crowd just, okay, I guess we're gonna have a ball game here, and it was so cool, like that moment. That moment is just so rewatchable. Like, I'll never forget watching that play. I mean, that will be the play that sticks with me forever about this game.
It's such a play that like sums up like the 2016 Penn State season as a whole, of like Penn State shoots itself in the foot. It's in, whether you want to say they're losing 13-3, it's 3rd and 11, like just the entire circumstance of it. And then somehow, some way, like Trace escapes, makes something of a semi-broken play, almost goes past the line of scrimmage, but is able to get the ball out in time. The Minnesota defender is so not ready for the ball. He's turned away. Irvin breaks open and gets it, and just it worked out all so perfectly. And even from the perspective of Irvin Charles, they top 200 recruit, a 4-star kid, super talented. And this, I think, was the obviously James Franklin's 3rd season. Once we saw that effect of the talent that was incoming. And Irv, it didn't quite work out for him at Penn State. As we'd said, he ended at IUP, and I think did have a cup of coffee with the Jets. So talent certainly, got him to the NFL. But for that play, for that to happen, I mean, and we'll talk about, apex moments for people. I think Irvin Charles certainly is remembered for that play. Any other plays besides, I think Irvin Charles was obviously remembered for this game and that play as turning things around, and you can even fill in on the rewatch, at the stadium, the atmosphere, the vibes, the juice, it all changed. But any other plays that stick out?
Everything Chris Godwin does. I can't not watch Chris Godwin and be like, my goodness, this guy. Trace hit a deep ball to him over the middle in this game. It was kind of when the momentum was turning. I think it set up the field goal, and he hit him with a deep pass down the middle, and just classic Godwin, using his body well, catching the ball. Obviously, it's the game's tied late. We know that. Again, we're not spoiling here, but the game's tied. Penn State's down 3 late, 23-20. And Godwin, I don't know what the angle even is. He just goes somehow like this and catches the ball. And it's that's just an impossible angle. So just everything Chris Godwin does, I just watched that game. I was like, oh, that was a dude. I could watch Chris Godwin play football forever, just he's, well, I just think we'll get to later. We get to Apex Mountain stuff I want to talk about, but Godwin was just, I just watch every route that man runs, every ball he catches, every just everything that guy did, I could watch again.
Yeah, no, we had it well, and I do have some more Godwin thoughts a little bit later on, but yeah, that's a play that I had written down as well. 3rd and 10, Penn State's down by 3. There's a minute left in the game or so. Trace is literally throwing off his back foot, the Derek Jeter throw from short to first that he was notable for. That was the type of throw that Trace had to throw, and it wasn't just it's Godwin extends out to catch it, but it was just also the fact of how he's able to use his body, and it's just such a smart football player, such a smart wide receiver, and having be Penn State fans and experiencing this wide receiver drought that we sort of have been in. Watching him play, even as I guess he was a junior in this. He was a junior, sophomore, but even as a 3rd-year junior, it was different, and it felt like anytime you threw to him that he was going to make a play, or that he was least in position to make a play. So that one certainly sticks out. Want to give a shout out to Jordan Smith, interception on 3rd and 9. There was 7:45 left in the 4th quarter. Minnesota at that point, it was a tie ball game. So, either they take the lead with a touchdown or take the lead with a field goal, and they were able to do neither. Don't want to say it wasn't pivotal in the end because Minnesota did get that field goal that gave them the lead, but a big play from Jordan Smith there. And then the only other one that I have is the Saquon Barkley touchdown run in overtime. Saquon, and this is once again a game that just like kind of summarizes the Saquon Barkley experience at Penn State, where offensive line blocking is just absolutely terrible, dreadful. Saquon had like nothing the entire game. I want to say that he had, I have it written down somewhere, 39 yards on 18 or 19 carries going into that carry in overtime. And that's all you needed though. He just needed that one carry, 25 yards, makes a guy miss. And then he just had this innate ability of like knowing when like the guy behind him was about to go for a tackle, and he would like jump up and just perfectly would get his feet out of the way, and he did that. And
it's that to me is that's a top 5 probably Saquon run of all time. So again, everything Saquon ever did is rewatchable, right? We know that. That's kind of goes without saying. Again, I'll get to that later, but that Saquon touchdown for sure. And you're 100% right. Like I think had 30-something yards rushing, as you said. He had 120, but one of those was like on a 21-yard run early in the game. So it was almost like a New York Giants game for him, right? It was like -3, 1 yard. All of a sudden he breaks a 50-yard. People, we read the stuff on X or whatever, like, oh, he only breaks big plays. That's all he ever does. Well, yeah, that's what you want a running back to do, to make big plays, and he certainly did there. And even the celebration where he just kind of throws his hands down, like, calm down, guys. And then just the whole thing is like just so Saquon. Like it was just. Again, as a sophomore, like you're watching him and you're starting to see greatness emerge. Again, all those Franklin recruits kind of coming to the surface in this game, which is kind of I think a big part of what this whole game was about, the turning point. You're seeing some of those players who we'd heard about. I wasn't with the site then. I was just reading the site, right? But like, reading the site, reading about recruiting, stuff like that. These are the guys who are going to be players, and you start to see them really emerge in this game. That's one that stands out. I would add one more play, the Trace scramble ahead of the Tyler Davis field goal. I'm not going to rewatch the Tyler Davis field goal. Clutch performance, kid, great job, fantastic. Tyler Davis is like the unsung hero of this game. He's fantastic. But the McSorley scramble on that is he gets like 30 yards, and you're like, it's just kind of just an underrated Trace play, but still like a highlight. Man, to have a quarterback who just back in the pocket, looking downfield, looking for these star receivers. No, I'm going to break out and run for 30 yards. What a play. Again, not something you're going to like necessarily, wow, that's an all-time Penn State highlight, but what a fantastic play in the moment. Just a heady, classic Trace McSorley play.
26-yard run on 3rd and 3. There's 20 seconds left in the game. Penn State's right around the 50-yard line. They need a first down. They need to get into field goal range. There's no timeouts left. Penn State had to spike the ball in the previous play because they completed a 7-yard pass on first down.
Of course.
Right in the open field. So once again, kind of just summarizes the Trace McSorley experience where, I mean, I'm a massive Trace fan, obviously, or maybe not obviously, but I love Trace. But it was that like stupid thing, puts him in like a bad position, but then, just pulls something out of his rear end and gets a 26-yard gain and gets him in field goal territory. We'll talk about Tyler Davis because he will come up here, and at least for me, will come up here in a second. Let's go to Mandela Effect. So for those that don't know what the Mandela Effect is there a moment from the game that on rewatch provides context to a moment we maybe misremember? And Brian, you're actually the one who came up with this topic, and you mentioned the Paul Posluszny tackle against Minnesota where he jumps up, catches the guy, gets a stop. What we forget about that is what, Brian?
Yeah. So again, that's a wonderful highlight, right? Kind of like we talk about rewatchable play. Like it's this moment where you see where, man, Posluszny nails Russell in the you almost, when you see that play so many times, you think, well, what did that save? It was a 4th and goal stop or whatever. Or it saved Penn State. Penn State was ahead by like 4 touchdowns when it happened, and Minnesota scored on the next play. So it's kind of those things like you're like, oh yeah, I guess that wasn't that big a deal, or I guess this didn't quite remember the same order that I thought it happened. Whatever it might be, just there's something about that game that you've sort of, gone into your brain now, and this is like the way you associate something having happened, and you rewatch and you're like, oh no, I was wrong, you know.
A little bit different.
It happens with age, you know what I mean?
Do you have any Mandela effect from this game?
I had a couple I came up with. One was, you know, we talked, you already kind of mentioned this, that, you know, the Fire Franklin chants. And I just like, I guess from reading the site and like, you know, being chronically Penn State online, I thought like, okay, I'm going to watch this game and, oh yeah, everyone's booing, calling for Franklin's head at the half and stuff like that. You didn't, now the version I watched, I'm sure it's probably the version you watched, the Big Ten version. Yeah. I didn't hear any chants. You know, I didn't really hear any boos. Now there were boos I'll get to in a second. There were definitely boos in this game, but not like, it wasn't like they're running at halftime and people are like throwing stuff at the players. Like I think the boos, and we're going to talk about this later. I want to at least, like the boos last year against Northwestern were, I mean, obvious, right? The boos even against Oregon, right? There were some obvious boos. You didn't hear that in the broadcast. And in my brain, I was just sort of like, oh, they're going to boo. They're booing Franklin the whole game. They're booing the team the whole game. And it really was a very supportive crowd. It was very subdued in the first half. And then the second half, they were like, it was a Beaver Stadium crowd. They were into it. You know, they're really into the game and really positive. So I was rewatching that and thought this is not at all how I remember it, you know, or at least how I remember reading about it.
Yeah, no, it is funny how like something like the Fire Franklin chants like catch on fire like that, when just like anything else, it was like 2,000 kids in the student section.
Yeah, right.
It probably could have been for lots of games over the years, how many times we've done a Fire Franklin chant, but at least from the Fire Franklin chants for that game, at least felt a little bit different in the effect of kind of where Penn State was at, and that it was, you know, the seat was getting hotter for games, and what would have happened if Penn State had lost the game. But yeah, no, it was not like, and it's funny that we're doing, you know, this game right after the James Franklin era ends, but yeah, how that Northwestern game this previous season felt a lot different.
Yeah, again, I was going to bring it up at kind of the beginning. Like there's some real parallels, I think, between if you watch this game, rewatch this game, and think about the Northwestern game last year. Like there's some real parallels. It's sort of like Penn State playing this, you know, Big Ten Westish sort of team. You know, like they're of that like same DNA as Northwestern. Minnesota, you know, circa 2016 is the same kind of team as Northwestern now, right? They play kind of the same way. Can't cover wide receivers. I was like, how's this guy keep getting open the whole game? You know, by the way, I didn't write his name down, but that guy's like a CFL star, still playing in the CFL.
Drew Wolodarski.
Yeah, he's still like in the CFL. I remember looking up, but like there are like these real parallels between this year's Penn State Northwestern game and that. And it's like you're doing the ultimate what if, you know, like Franklin. People were fed up with Franklin this year. And I don't want to make this. We clearly don't make this a whole like anti-James podcast. Not what we're about, right? But like there was clearly like some vibes this past year of like, well, James is done after the UCLA game and stuff. And it's like they lost that game and it was over. We all know how that plays out. And I'm watching this game and I'm like, oh, there were some vibes of like, here's Penn State struggling. They're 2-2. Like if they lose this game, as you mentioned, Matt Rule, what if, you know what I mean? And they pull this game out. We know what happens after, you know, and it's like, but there were some real parallels. Even if it was a 3:30 Big Ten Network kick, you know, it was like just kind of a soggy Saturday, not a real well played game. Penn State left, you know, to use James's term from last year, left some meat on the bone, you know, throughout this game. Like Penn State probably should have won this game a little more easily, but they couldn't quite convert in the first half. And all of a sudden it's a ball game. So I just kept watching this game like, oh man, this really, it felt like a lot of Penn State games from the last decade.
Yeah. My Mandela effect was that, okay, so I remember it being like a bad weather game. I, for some reason, thought it was much colder. And I was surprised that it was October 1st, which I guess, you know, looking back and then seeing the schedule, it's like, okay, well, they played Maryland after this, then they had the bye, and then they had Ohio State. I knew that was all in October. So for no reason in my mind, I was like, this felt like a game that was closer to Halloween when it was literally the first day of October. It felt more like a late fall, colder game. It was like gross weather. And I want to say like the weather is probably like in the 40s, but super rainy, as you mentioned, super soggy. But yeah, for whatever reason, that just stuck out to me when it started. And I was like, whoa, it's only October 1st. Because I feel like for most games for October 1st, you get like 60-degree days.
Right.
something that stuck out to me that on rewatch. Any other Mandela effects for you?
I kind of love it. One was Irv being in the game. Like why was Irv in the game? And I just, first of all, did you pick up on this? It was DeAndre Tompkins' birthday. They said it 14 times.
21st birthday. Yeah.
Birthday. So he was ready to go out that night. You know what I mean? He kind of has a bad drive, and that's why Irv gets in. And never in a million years would I have remembered that. And I was like, why was Irv Charles even in the game? It was
Saeed Blacknell was also out that game.
Saeed Blacknell was out. Yeah. Okay. There's a name, that guy, right? Saeed was out. So, and Tompkins kind of has a bad game. And so Irv gets in because of that. And that was one of those moments where I was like, why is Irv? And moving with Irv, I kind of mentioned this earlier, like in my brain, again, forever, I've associated Penn State, that first drive of the second half, scored right away. And, Irv caught. It was actually the second drive, which is, Penn State got the ball at the half and did nothing. They stalled. And Minnesota really, up 13-3, had a chance to maybe kind of put this game away, and the defense stopped them, and then the Irv play happened, and then the momentum shifted. So that was one of those things I just looking back at the whole, the Irv Charles game, right? This is what this is, the Irv and Charles game. Why was he in the game? When did this happen? Stuff like that.
Yeah, even the Juwan Johnson was his same class and same archetype of wide receiver, both from New Jersey, right? They have a bunch of these parallels, and they flash forward a year, and it's Juwan is the guy that has steps into a starting wide receiver role and 50 receptions, and Irv is.
He's a gunner. He's a gunner. At that point, right?
This was like it for him. Yeah. So it's a very big sliding doors moment. Irvin Charles, Penn State football, James Franklin era. It's crazy. What about biggest gaffes? So I had two plays down.
I got two too. Also, go ahead.
Okay, maybe we have the same.
We'll see.
Penn State was down 3-0 with 12 minutes to go in the second quarter. It was 4th and goal from the 1, and shout out James Franklin. He took the points. He took
the point.
Listen, back.
Hey, Pat Narduzzi would too. Pat would too, right?
The only thing I'll say is back then, even though Penn State did have a good offensive performance against Pitt, and right, we know what we know now about that offense. But at that point in James Franklin's tenure, I don't know how much faith that he had in this offense and really in the team in general. So it was like, let's tie this game up against Minnesota. It's going to be an ugly game, but it was just funny knowing what we know about this 2016 offense. Oh, Gesicki, Deshaun Hamilton, Saquon, Trace, and they're like 4th and 1. From the 4th and goal from the 1, and they're take the points. Yeah,
surely couldn't just Saquon just jump over everyone? Like we'd seen that before, right? Even I think the year before against Illinois, maybe, or somewhere around there. Like, I thought we'd seen that with. I was like, but they go, they and this is where the boos came out, right? This is where they absolutely boo the offense off the field, and I'm like, oh, it was so bad. And it was like, hey, we're going to take the points, tie this game. But Minnesota, like the very next drive, I don't know if you picked up on this, they punt from like the 34-yard line. Penn State 34. And I'm like, we hear a lot about this analytics book. Oh, the teams do this now. They follow this book. They subscribe to this service. I was like, did they not have it in 2016? Like, what's going on here? Like, if 4th and a half yard, like, go for it. And then, like I said, Minnesota doesn't kick either. And that was absolutely and even thinking about like how aggressive Franklin became late in his career, and obviously I know they believed in the offensive line the last couple of years, but just how aggressive James became on fourth down, like to not go for it here, it was startling to watch. I was like, what are we doing?
No, it was a big difference from analytically what he became, but on the I do this listed as biggest gap, but yet also watching this game and the way that the offensive line blocked Saquon.
Yeah,
I kind of understand why they took the points because man, it was ugly as we had mentioned. The other big gaffe that I have, and this is one like I don't remember this at all. Penn State has Minnesota's running back Rodney Smith. Sorry, there's a Rodney Smith and a Brian Smith, so I want to make sure I got the right guy. They had Minnesota running back Rodney Smith broken down in the backfield. It was about to be 3rd and 20 with 2:09 left. Minnesota was going to be at their 40-yard line. And as Brian just said, they were punting from the 34 at different times. So basically would have secured Penn State's, chance to, keep the game tied, get the ball back. And what happens? Marcus Allen, as 3 Penn State defenders are helping him get the Minnesota running back down, grabs the guy by the face mask, automatic first down Minnesota, and basically what gave them a field goal and nearly pull off the upset.
Yep. Yeah, great minds. That was my second play for biggest gaffe, and foreshadowing. This is the really sad part, right? It foreshadows a year later at Michigan State. We know what happens. Marcus Allen with that roughing the passer penalty, where it lets Michigan State kick that field goal to basically knock Penn State out of the Big Ten hunt, out of the playoff hunt. And I want to talk a lot about Marcus Allen later, because wow, what I mean, we'll get to that, but I'd forgotten that play too. Absolutely forgotten. And I was like, oh man, come on, dude. You're having an amazing game. And absolutely, like opened the door. And I don't remember that play at all. And just being like, wow, how, I mean, nowadays, like just how debilitating, I'm sure I reacted to it at the time, the same. I probably was just losing my mind. I'm sure we all were, but I'd forgotten that play to let Minnesota have the field goal. And Marcus plays an an amazing game, right? We'll go get to that in a second. I mean, just the game. But I'd forgotten that play totally. So yeah, we had the exact same one here.
Wasn't it also funny rewatching this game and it going to the 2-minute spot and it
didn't stop? The play didn't stop. Yeah.
Crazy. It was funny when I was watching that because it was like 2 minutes and 9 seconds left, and I was like, all right, we'll get the 2-minute warning.
Yeah.
They just buzz right through. I was like, oh,
it changes quick, right? Your whole, all that stuff, these rules, you're like, oh yeah, I completely forgot that. Yeah, absolutely.
Completely changes the calculus. So, all right, the Yaacov Yisrael. Hey, remember that guy? Background of this, I loved Yaacov Yisrael as a kid. I still believe that he ran a 4.2. That was just 7-year-old Pat's like watching him. He was the fastest player I ever saw. So we're just gonna mention and. For some of these games, it will be better. This is obviously probably one of the, more recent games. It's 2016. I mean, half of these guys are still in the NFL. So this topic will probably be a little bit better when, you guys go back and do your 90s games. We'll do some, early 2000s games. But I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players that I wrote down for, hey, remember that guy? Who do you
want? Well, I focused on I really focused on a position group in particular. So I'll start. I'll go. The big story of this game, we know this against Michigan. This is kind of the part you probably remember is Penn State was down like 47 linebackers, right? And they still were in this game. So Kabinda was out, Brandon Bell was out, Jan Johnson had torn his ACL the week before. So we have the guys I thought of were, and we know White Brandon Smith got ejected the week before, right? Got ejected. So I remember Manny Bowen, but like I hadn't thought about Manny in forever. And the whole Manny Bowen saga, I really hadn't thought about like he's on the team, he's off the team, he's on the team, he's at Utah, he's quitting or whatever. So Manny Bowen was, by the way, really good in this game. It was really good.
He's somebody to have down. And he's one of those guys that if you play his career over, right? If you played it 10 times, I think that there's a good chance that we got like the worst version or one of the worst versions because he was so talented and had a fantastic game. It was just a good linebacker and a young guy at this point. He was only a redshirt freshman. He was a 2015 guy. So.
Yeah, these guys I'm going to mention. And then Cam Brown, too, played really well. And I thought, Cam Brown, I hadn't thought about in forever. So Cam Brown, Manny Bowen. And the last one was the guy that kind of made me, put me on the linebackers was I didn't remember Jake Cooper at all. For the life of me. And I was like, who's that guy? Who's 33? Who's this guy? I was like, who's this? And I literally had to Google the roster. I was like, Jake Cooper. I don't remember his story at all. So those guys I was watching and like, again, they were like, you're talking about linebackers 4, 5, and 6 probably or something, some order like that. And I'm like watching those guys play and, against Minnesota, we know what Minnesota, even with a different coach, Tracy Claeys at the time, they still do the same stuff Minnesota's always done, and so you have to have good linebacker play. And I thought those guys – Bowen and Brown especially played pretty well, and Brandon Smith played pretty well, and Cooper was in there he made a play or two, and I was like, I just hadn't thought about those guys in forever. So those were my guys. I remember those guys.
So I did have Cam Brown down. I did have Manny Bowen down. Cooper definitely fits for this, and he's another guy that played right away. Played as a true freshman because he was pretty far along as far as like a recruiting goes from Archbishop Wood, him and Ryan Bates, high school teammates. He ends up battling injuries the rest of his career. And oddly enough, he goes down this game with a shoulder injury, and it was always that shoulder is what kind of, prevented him. So once again, just a weird that you mentioned, Jay Cooper played along this game. I feel like he probably had the shoulder injury beforehand and just got pushed into action, but he hurt in this game as well, which was kind of, unfortunately for him, something that happened, periodically throughout his career. Other guys that I wrote down that I was like, hey, love that guy. Miss him. Tyrell Chavis. Like, that's just my ideal, like backup defensive tackle, JUCO guy, big guy, 6'4", 320, 315, 310, whatever he weighed. You can put Tyrell Chavis on every Penn State team, and he's going to get 20% of the snaps as defensive tackle. Vaughn Walker, just special teams, captain guy. Yeah. Love Devon Walker. He was out there making tackles on special teams. Ryan Buchholz, another guy whose career got kind of derailed by back injury. Loved Ryan Buchholz. And then I have the kickers, Tyler Davis, who I'll mention here in a little bit, and Joey Julius, of course.
Oh man, yeah,
the kicker. Made some. Tried to make some tackles. He whipped on a tackle. He got a flag on Minnesota at some point.
The guy got ejected in this game. Yeah.
So just exactly what you remember Joey Julius. He was doing Joey Julius things during it. So shout out to Joey Julius. Any Minnesota guys? This was a nameless Minnesota team.
Yes. Mitch Widener was the quarterback. Were you like Mitch Widener? Like I was like, who's this guy? And I was like, oh yeah. They were talking him up like his statistics over the course of his career. And I was like, man, that is just a completely like Minnesota quarterback. Like he played again. This is why I love. Again, if you actually read the site, you'll read my Monday column every week, and I always have the Big Ten West moment of the week because there's just like the Big Ten West will forever be my favorite thing about the Big Ten. Like those schools that are all like the same, and they're all 7-5. They're all like guys who are
at this point in time.
Yes,
like, you had Wisconsin that I think in this era was kind of running the Big Ten West as much as you can. They're trending down, after Russell Wilson and everything like that. But just all these like perennial 7-5 teams, like that are, and this was like the epitome of who they are. I mean, like by the way, this team I think went 8-4, 9-3, something like that. They had a really good record. Yeah, they went 8-4 in conference. Their only losses were to Penn State. They then lose the following week to Iowa, and then they lost at Nebraska, which was a ranked Nebraska, and at Wisconsin, which was number 5 at that time. Obviously, Penn State plays them in the Big Ten Championship. So a good Minnesota football team. Yeah, and then the one other guy I'll mention with Minnesota, I have to because I'm a basketball coach from the state of Indiana. I have to. They keep talking about their 6'10" tight end, right? I don't know his name. I forget it already, right? I mean, I think I had it in my notes, but I can't find it this quickly. But they talk about him. They have a 6'10". He's the tallest position player in all college football. They talk about it. He gets a cup of coffee like playing offensive tackle in the NFL. But they're like, he's originally from Indiana. I was like, who is this guy? I had to look him up, and he went to shout out Center Grove High School, south side of Indy, Greenwood, Indiana. Like this guy, like I was like, perfect. He is again, this will be lost on 99.9% of our viewers, but like he is the epitome of a Center Grove basketball player. I was like, yes, this fits perfect. Yes, I absolutely that dude. You know what I mean? That guy. I never would have thought of that guy in a million years, but I vaguely remember his high school basketball career. There we go. Yeah. Otherwise, again, running back Rodney Smith was a guy who was in Minnesota for 700 years. But also not someone I like particularly remember. Running back Shannon Brooks had a big game. He had 14 carries for 100 yards and a touchdown once again. Like I remember the touchdown run that he had. I can't remember anything else about his career. Yeah. You do have like some younger guys like Tyler Johnson. Yes. Wide receiver. Well, they talk about Tyler Johnson earlier, and they're saying in the broadcast was like I did know this like they throw to Tyler Johnson. I think it's incomplete, and they're like, well, someone's got to catch some balls today. They're looking at this guy. Who is he? And I'm like, that guy obviously kills Penn State in 2019. Kills Penn State. I'm like, oh, this dude. Here we go. It is a perfect example, right? They're talking about him being this up and coming receiver. They're looking for something from him. Like he's a dude, and you had no idea in that game, right? Yeah. And same with Antoine Winfield Jr., who he did play a little bit more. He had 8 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss, and which was out there being Antoine Winfield Jr. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's funny, just like with the 2019, what that game meant for Minnesota football, probably their biggest win. Outside of 1999 Penn State, great memories here, guys. So they're also stay with us through this thing. It gets better, we promise. They were laying the groundwork for their program as well through this game. Mm-hmm. So funny to see that. How about, man, it'd be nice to have this guy. So Once
Easy.
again, I think this, you could have a couple different answers to this. And
no,
right,
there's one answer. There's one answer.
So
okay, there's one answer.
Any game that we do from 2015 to 2017, the answer is obviously Saquon Barkley. Is there guy besides Saquon Barkley?
No. I don't think the answer is Saquon Barkley.
Okay, good. Because that's not my answer.
It wasn't my answer. No, I said I think the answer is easy. Chris Godwin.
Okay, I have Godwin as well.
Okay. Because I wrote this. I remember again, like we're doing this. We can't help but do a little sad here with this too, right? But like I remember doing an interview with Notre Dame ahead of the Orange Bowl. And, I remember the question was asked, like, hey, what's the spot Penn State has to step up in? And I remember saying, like, look, if Penn State had a decent wide receiver in 2023, they make the playoff. If Penn State has a good wide receiver in 2024, they maybe win the national title. And I will forever believe this. I think we all will, or many of us will. And so it's Chris Godwin. Like, give me Chris Godwin on any of the Penn State teams the last 3 years, and I'll take my chances with anybody with that Penn State roster with Chris Godwin. I think it's Chris Godwin.
No, I'm in agreement. I mean, yes, obviously Saquon is like
Saquon. Yeah.
100% could be the answer. Yeah. But watching this game in particular, and Saquon's performance, while great, right, he gets the game-winning touchdown. It was tough otherwise, and it's no fault to his, but it was just jarring watching a receiver like Godwin where, Trace could throw into triple coverage and Godwin could come down with it, or it can be a little bit behind him and he's able to retort his body and make the catch. Just type of guy that we haven't had.
Yes,
you put him on the 23 team or the 24 team, it's or 25 team, and it's more, maybe we're singing different song right now, but that was okay. Look at us. We're on the same page with that one.
We did not plan this at all, guys, for the record.
No. We did pivotal moments already. That again coincides with some of the big plays, at least in this game. Apex Mountain Performance. You mentioned this earlier that this is the Irvin Charles game, and yes, I think he's not the only one, but this is very much like this is Penn State wise the peak for Irvin Charles. It's this game. Is there anyone else that you wrote down that could potentially?
I wrote down a couple guys, and it probably is. I mean, to meet your exact definition, maybe not. But I'll start with Marcus Allen. 22 tackles. What?
Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah.
I mean, now historically, if you really follow Penn State football and like in the sports information world, people are always like questioning, really, did this guy really have this many tackles? Penn State sports information, but Marcus Allen was everywhere in this game. He was fantastic, and it brought to mind to me. And I'm kind of like, I'm gonna kind of pivot here a little bit. Is Marcus Allen the coolest football player in the history of Penn State?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Right.
Mm-hmm. I always think of I try to put myself as like the 7-year-old, 8-year-old, like, right. Yeah. Your first memories of Penn State football,
right?
Like how much they, those teams mean to you. Yeah. And it's like, who was the coolest player?
Marcus Allen is. I'll go with mine. Marcus Allen's way cooler than Tony Sacca.
Yeah. I was Eric McCoo. Eric McCoo was my favorite player. Tony Johnson, cool in their own rights, but that's what I mean, though, right? If you were in second grade or third grade in this 2016 season, Marcus Allen, just a big safety with the tattoos and the size,
gold mouthpiece. Has
the beginning of that. So we had the gold mouthpiece.
The mannequin challenge that year, which we haven't even talked about. The mannequin challenge picks up after 2 games later. What this Marcus Allen's the cool. By the way, this is a team that's just filled with cool dudes. Like if we were talking about the coolest Penn State players ever, we mentioned Saquon. I mean, this is forever will be a Saquon podcast in my opinion because he's the coolest. Okay, if Marcus Allen's the coolest defensive player ever, Saquon might be the coolest offensive player ever. Or he just might be. These guys they just had swag, right? Trace, come on. Like Michael Robinson's the only guy who's close at quarterback. Those 2 guys are the 2 coolest dudes who ever played quarterback at Penn State. There's so many dudes you're like, wow, this guy was awesome. I loved watching this guy play. But Marcus Allen, and by the way, I mean, again, he's a great player. I mean, he's just a great safety.
Yep. No, I mean, 22 tackles. Well, it's now basically playing linebacker in this game. I was reading some stuff after, and it was, James just talking about, the importance of having guys in the box and blah, blah, blah. And, just how good Marcus was at being able to do that, to come down to play linebacker. But yeah, you don't get 22 tackles by accident. As you mentioned, it was not like a fake 22 tackles. He was always around the ball in this game. So yeah, I think that you could argue this is his apex because I don't know if he necessarily gets any better. I'm trying to think if he had any other big games. I mean, right, Ohio State game coming up, he has the block, which is probably
the best play of all time.
Best play, but yet I think if you asked, this is at least like an underrated Marcus Allen game. I don't think people realize, right? You probably don't remember Marcus Allen having 22 tackles in this game. So yeah, I certainly had him down as well. The other guy that I had was Tyler Davis, 3 for 3 on field goals, 40-yard field goal to tie the game. He was super, super reliable in the 2016 season. 2017, he had a couple misses, but I for a walk on and where Penn State's Sam Ficken was fine towards the end of his career, but where a kicker was at heading into the season, not really knowing, and Tyler Davis coming in and making a bunch of kicks in a row and then making a 40-yard field goal in not ideal conditions. No. It was rainy, it was wet. So I think it could be argued that this was the best Tyler Davis that we saw.
I would absolutely agree with that. I mean, I think Tyler Davis stands out for sure. I went a little different definition too. Like this wasn't the best Trace performance of all time, but was this? I didn't realize, and maybe this is a Mandela effect kind of too. We can talk. Who cares? We can talk about it, right? We can fit it in different categories. How good was Trace this game? The stats were absurd. He won 400 yards of offense, right? And you're like
19 of 41 though, which is very.
Well, that's 2016 Trace YOLO. You know what I mean? But YOLO. But he had more than 400 yards of offense, and you're like, what in the world? Did he really? I didn't remember that at all. And I was like watching the game, and I was like, dude, this guy's making every play. Like this is fun. And it's not. I mean, peak Trace is probably the Ohio State loss, or probably actually Washington Fiesta Bowl. But
I would argue Ohio State 2018. I do think that.
Yeah, he was really. I know they lost that game, but 2017 Fiesta Bowl, he was. Like a third down, he was killer. He just made every throw.
Third down or something like
that. He was a killer in that game. So this wasn't it, but I was like, man, Trace was so good. He deserves mention. I feel like we're just like, Trace, Trace did his thing. And again, Trace is like, gosh, I mean, this again, like the 3 or 4 coolest dudes Penn State's ever had, played in this game. And you're like, wow, how did that happen? We saw the celebration, right? The home run celebration pops up in this game.
Yeah, no, it does. 335 yards passing, 73 yards rushing, no turnovers.
A couple touchdowns, passing touchdown, rushing touchdown. He was really good.
And also just good at escaping sacks and throwing the ball away and just, again, the little things that I don't want to say that we missed because I still love Drew Alec, but I still believe in him, right? If he can get another year, let's bring him back. No. But no, it was a quintessential Trace game where it wasn't the prettiest. It's not, right? As we find out, right? He's not an NFL quarterback, but at the end of the game, you're like, oh yeah, and he just had 400 yards and made a big play and won the game. So, yeah, that is Trace McSorley. Rewatchability ranking. So, scale 1 to 10. It's very funny that we picked this game first because I mean, we'll see what your score's at. My score is not particularly high on the rewatchability rankings just because.
I went on a 5, so I'm sorry. I went out of 5, so I guess I'll adjust. But I was thinking, I like kind of, this was like my idea too. And so I think I talked about like rewatchability. I think of like a whole game. You can sit down. Like I'm thinking like, again, deep Penn State lore. You go like the Holiday Bowl in the late 80s. More recent, I would think like, the Rose Bowl against USC. Like that game's just a wild, like the whole game's fun. You're like, wow, this is awesome. No. This was not. I very legitimately fell asleep rewatching this in the first half. I'm not lying. I was laying on the couch like, I'm going to start doing this project. I had my notepad. I woke up, it was halftime. I was like, I have to go back and rewatch this. So I fell asleep in the first half. So I put it like a 2 out of 5. Maybe a 4. So again, like if you're going to rewatch this, like listen to the podcast, go find like the 10 or 15 minute highlight version and watch that because the first half to me, it was a slog. I don't know what you thought.
No, I gave it a 6 out of 10 just because the ending is so great. But no, same thing. Which again, probably like bad on us for picking this as our first rewatchability or rewatchable game because it wasn't really all that rewatchable. Guys, I know we complain about the offensive line like every year, like it really doesn't matter. Like the offensive, and this isn't just like a Penn State thing. This is like fans across. Unless you have like a dominant like. Offensive line like the Eagles last season, which was like generational, like one of the best of all time. Every team, every fan base thinks that their team's offensive line kind of sucks. watch this offensive line run block and then watch Penn State nowadays, because plays completely blown up, and people give like Saquon, crap for, oh, he's dancing behind the backfield. There were some plays that it was like on the handoff, like there wasn't anything like.
There were three guys. He ran backwards. Okay, he should have got what he could get. Okay, he turned a negative 2-yard loss into a negative 3-yard loss. Like, quit giving me a hard time. You know what I mean? He tried to make a play.
No, it was how it's even going back and watching it. The fact that this team beats Ohio State, beats Wisconsin, wins the Big Ten, and it's just, went toe to toe with a really, really good USC team, and probably should have won the Rose Bowl.
Yep,
it's crazy. Because even on a rewatch, you would not. It's tough to see that. Tough to see that coming forward. So
a week later, Saquon goes for over 200 against Maryland. By the way, the calendar turned October, so I know what Maryland is once it turns from September to October. But still, like, they played so much better, so much cleaner the very next week. It's almost shocking to think about.
That leads us into what we wish we knew then. Because
oh no.
This is. I think that this topic is the reason that we picked this game, because it just was so pivotal in like the sliding doors moment of Penn State. Now, granted, that you could talk about the Ohio State game, but it really did feel like everything changed after this game, even if it wasn't to win the Big Ten or to go to the Rose Bowl or things like that. What happened after this? They win this. It almost feels like they
win nine straight games. This is the start of a 9-game win streak, which is absurd. How many of those happen in Penn State history?
They beat the hell out of Maryland the following week, 38-14, which is low key. Probably a game we'll get to eventually in the coming years on this, because that is a very fun rewatch from what I remember.
Yes,
they beat Ohio State. They beat the hell out of Purdue, scoring 62 points. They beat the hell out of Iowa, scoring 41 points. They beat Indiana in a sneaky close game, but they scored 45 points. They beat Rutgers 39-0. They beat Michigan State 45-12. They put up 38 against Wisconsin. They scored 49 against USC. This is an offense that just went absolutely bonkers after all this, which I don't know if that is necessarily. Obviously we did not know that at the time, but I went back and I looked to see if I could find anything. BSD's authorship, it didn't show who wrote this. My guessing is that it's Ellie, but he said about James Franklin, it has been hard for Coach Franklin to please many of the Nittany Lion faithful. At times it has been as though the coach has been asked to do the impossible and has been held accountable for results that aren't fairly placed on his shoulders. One such instance is the continued drumbeat by some in the media for him to gain a signature win. Isn't it funny how that was written after the Minnesota game in 2016? And that could have been written at any time in the following years.
That is the most Ellie couple sentences of all time. So
I think it's Ellie.
We're going to put that on him. I wrote in my notes, like, it's easy. It's super easy to be cynical about James Franklin now, right? Like, we're here where we are. It's really easy to be cynical. We know how things end. But just picture yourself like telling, you back in 2016, hey, for the next decade, this is true. This is a fact. Penn State's going to be ranked in the top 10 of the nation every single year for the next decade.
Yeah.
You could not have believed that. You would not have believed that. This is a team that's going to win, a Big Ten title. They are going to have a signature win. They are going to, play for another Big Ten title. They're going to, the college football playoff. They're going to reach the semifinals of it. They're going to have all these, number 2 in the country, a couple different seasons. Like, you just could not have fathom that. I don't think, especially in the first half of that, around 13-3 at the half, you never fathom that. And just as cynical as it is, that's going to happen from that point for the next decade. For the next decade, Penn State's going to be a major player in the realm of college football. And that's what, if you ask, what go back to expectations, what were you thinking going into, hey, can this be fun? Yeah. Well, that's been pretty fun. It's been pretty fun to be like in the mix, see your name up there and all those things. So yeah, that's the thing. I wish I knew that then. This was all going to be okay.
Yeah. No, it was the start of, again, not the golden age, because it wasn't the golden age, but a really, really fun time. And even for again, you're a little bit older than me. Like, I don't remember the 90s. Like, the first Penn State season that I remember is 2000. My first memory is actually Adam Talafero getting injured.
Ooh,
Yeah. Not a great first memory.
No.
But for me, like the last 10 years, and it did not end great. Very clearly did not end great for anyone involved. But this was the turning point. And it could be argued, right, the Ohio State game is going to play an important part in this too. But it just how they came out and played against Maryland and how they were able to storm back against Ohio State. There's just something about this game, and this is why we all bring it up. This Minnesota game, the Urban Charles catch, just like the sliding doors moment that was. If that doesn't happen, who knows where Penn State's at? Who knows if they go out and play as well against Maryland? Who knows if they go and beat Ohio State? And who knows what happens with James Franklin? But instead, we get this big win. Saquon Barkley does a celebration to calm down.
Yeah,
we all calm down, and we won some games. So just a really, really fun season too. Like taking back like the James Franklin, like his tenure thing. Just this 2016 team, if you would have told Penn State fans after beating Minnesota in an ugly game in overtime that it was like you were about to embark on 9 amazing, fun games, like even games that Penn State loses against like USC in the Rose Bowl, like that was a great game and a great game. So
to your point, I mean, like even I think we all kind of look at the USC game. They lost it, but whatever. It was an exhibition at the end of the day, right? But a fun exhibition. I mean, sure, you wish you won it, but like the next 10 games, again, they're going to be at the forefront of the sport. Maybe outside the Maryland game, but from that point forward, at the forefront of the sport, playing these wildly fun games. And again, I talk about like this. There were some just fun dudes on this team, and you're going to watch them. And again, the locker room celebrations that season became like really part of the story, right? There was the mannequin challenge. There was, and again, that's all Marcus Allen leading that. You know what I mean? There's Kabinda with like the famous, it's almost like a meme, with the broken thumb, like with the thumbs up. Yeah, right. Like you got Kabinda with that. You have the Grant Haley return. I mean, it's all time great Penn State play. But again, like Gesicki, making the catch against Michigan State, and Trace just hitting home runs and the wheel routes and all that. It's just like what a wildly fun ride you're about to go on. You had no idea that afternoon.
The second half team of it as well, and we saw that in this game where Penn State goes and they score 17 unanswered points after halftime to take a 20-13 lead. Now, of course, they do give it up, but able to storm back then and get the win. And I don't know if we'll ever have I don't want to say a team, but like the timeline of it, of Penn State coming off of the sanctions, it being James Franklin's third year, like traditionally that third season for coaches, like when you need to put things together. And for Penn State to start out the way they did, 2-2, down by 10 points against a Minnesota team, potentially looking at 2-3. And what came out of that halftime was one of the greatest Penn State offenses of all time for the rest of the games. And just this team that never, ever quit. Like, it was fun. It was fun. And the hope too. Like that's the other thing, like the hope that team gave us, because even like we mentioned, like the USC thing, and bowl games are a little bit different back then than they are now, but yes, it's an exhibition, but it was also like we are just arriving now. Like it felt like there was so much more, and there was and there wasn't. There was and there wasn't.
There was and there wasn't.
An argument that is this James Franklin's Apex Mountain this whole season, but potentially a discussion for another time when we talk about some different games. At least we know that the Minnesota game was not his apex. Did he do anything? I know we mentioned like biggest gas or stuff like that, other than the fourth down call. Was there any other like James weirdness in this game?
No, I didn't think so. Didn't he stand out to you?
Else that I could.
Yeah. I feel like so much of the James gaffes, I could be wrong. I mean, I could go back and rewatch all these games again. I don't really want to go back and rewatch Army. I'm being honest. I don't want to go back and rewatch the Illinois loss, his first. I don't want to go back and rewatch those games. But like, I feel like so many of his coaching gaffes wind up sort of being tied to having a bad offensive line. Yeah. I'm not wrong in that. Like, I mean, some of those losses, like if they just would have ground out the clock or done this, and it's like, yeah, okay, great. Like if they had a 4-minute offense, like I've always said this about the Franklin era, and again, like whatever, but like how many games did he lose his first 2 years? Or I mean, we're already getting into 2017. Like he loses the Ohio State game famously because they can't get a first down. Like if you could just get one more first down, what's James Franklin? I talked about he was 16-14 coming in this game, and I can name Northwestern, Illinois, I know there are more, and I'm blanking on them now, but there were like 3 or 4 games where it's like if Penn State just got one more first down those first couple of years, they're a 9-win team. The whole
The
vibe.
Maryland game in 2014.
Maryland, yeah, famously Maryland, yeah, of course, the handshake game, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Fun times. I think that's all we got though. Brian, thank you for joining me. I mean, this is like half your show as well. Like it's not like you're joining me just for this one. You'll be on for others, but hopefully you guys really enjoyed this. Once again, we're going to do this every couple of weeks, have some different games. Tim and Jared are going to help as well. I know Brian specifically has some 90s games that he wants to do. So
I'm not that old, guys. I feel like you're making me feel like so old. Okay, like again, for the record, I'm like 42. I'm not like ancient, but like I always say this, like we all fan in different ways. You know, I know like Jared, you know, has his, you know, he's got his stuff, and I know you, Pat, like you've got your is your wide receiver coach hot board ready yet? I mean, I'm still waiting. You know, all right.
This isn't coming out until February 25th, so we might have the wide receiver coach.
It'll be out before then. But anyway, yeah, we all fan our different ways. Like people like recruiting, people like whatever. Like my random fun thing is I go back and rewatch old Penn State games. I don't know. I just enjoy the games. I always have. So, you know, we got more games that I hop on YouTube, and there's some great sites out there that show these games, and it's just kind of one of my favorite things to go back and rewatch some of these things. So to be able to have a chance to do this and talk about these things I randomly do to fall asleep on a Sunday afternoon is really fun.
No, definitely. And for everyone watching, we obviously have some games that we're excited to do, but if there's any game that you in particular would like for us to do,
except 6-4, not doing it.
We are going to do 6-4.
I'm sitting that one out.
There's going to be like a slog week that we're just going to have.
I'm saying like
slog month. And
I want to remember Robbie Gould in the best way, and that's not going to be that game.
But no, if there's any games, as long as there's a replay of it on YouTube somewhere so that we can watch it. Doesn't need to be the full game, but at least like I know that there was like a 60-minute version of this game. So as long as we could get something. So if there's anything like the 80s, way back in time in the 80s, we're certainly open to doing it. But yeah, this will be coming every couple of weeks. Thank you guys for joining us for this one. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and we will see you the next time.